Hello, I'm Donald McIntyre, founder of Etherplan. This is Etherplan Live, and joining us today is Diego Gutierrez Zaldivar, CEO of RSK. Hello, Diego. How are you?
Hi, Donald. Very nice talking to you once agagan. I
Thank
think the
you very
last
much.
interview was 4 or 5 years ago. No?
Yes, it was in 2013.
Yes.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for your time and for doing this interview. The interview is about RSK as a smart contracts platform on Bitcoin. And my first question is if you could describe what is RSK, a summary.
Well, RSK is a sidechain to Bitcoin that implements Ethereum smart contract capabilities as of today. But we don't see it only limited to that. We see it as a smart contract execution environment that in the future will add different environments, execution runtime environments. So we might have environments, execution environments that will depart from the Ethereum standard. Although the first runtime environment will always be full compatible with Ethereum.
With Ethereum. And I read on your website that you talk about near instant payments in 10 seconds. What is that feature? How is it different to Ethereum, and how can you enable that if you're working on Bitcoin that is 10 minutes?
Perfect. Well, it's not much different than Ethereum in terms of the timing. Currently, RSK is validating logs every 30 seconds because it's prioritizing the Bitcoin efficiency over the RSK efficiency, and also because we are stabilizing the network, but we can reach 10-second validation times as we tested before. So that will come when we go out of beta. And how we do that, given that we are secured by the Bitcoin network, is when you think on the Bitcoin mining process, you have a byproduct, because the miners are always creating proof of work, even they are not valid for the target difficulty of Bitcoin, and they need to communicate this proof of work to the pools in order to get paid the proportional amount of to the effort they did over time. So these proof of works are being delivered to the pools all the time, but the pools discard them or keep them only for the purpose of paying miners their fees. And what we do is we use those intermediate proof of work with lower difficulty to secure intermediate blocks. So basically, we are using the byproduct of the Bitcoin mining, and in that way, we don't create any additional, footprint or energy impact, on the world.
Okay. And the other feature that I saw, there's a little bit of echo.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
The other no, I think maybe it's on my side, but the other feature is that you offer higher scalability. How higher scalability in what sense you mean here?
Well, scalability has I would say two dimensions. The technical one that has been discussed to infinitum to infinity in the last years due to the scaling debate and everything. But there's another element to the scaling problem that is economic in nature, because once you start scaling blockchains, and that's the nature of the blockchain, you also are forcing the full network, the validation nodes, not only the miner nodes, to store more data. To give an example, if a network processes 400 transactions per second, then blockchain will grow at 1 terabyte per year. So who is going to be able to support that without any economic incentive? And that's a problem we have in Bitcoin and Ethereum. We are not incentivizing full nodes. We are only incentivizing, miners at the moment. So in RSK, we are approaching that by creating economic incentives for full nodes to run. We created our chief scientist, Sergio, created a mechanism called proof of unique blockchain storage, where we pay the full nodes to store the RSK blockchain. And in the future, we plan to also incentivize dual nodes that are also running a Bitcoin node to get payment for storing the Bitcoin blockchain as well. So that's one aspect. On the technical aspects, what we do is we have compression systems on the blockchain side to optimize also how much information is saved on the blockchain. So we have transient transactions that are stored for a certain period of time, and then once they are settled, they can be removed from the blockchain. And then we have a compression mechanism called Lumino compression protocol that it will enable us more or less to store 2,000 transactions per second with the same amount of space that would require 400 transactions per second. So that's one side of the optimization. And then we have our off-chain protocol on top of that, that is Lumino, that can reach maybe 10, 15 times whatever you have on-chain in regular scenarios. Of course, in a scenario of exchange to exchange, it's much more efficient than in a scenario of an end user to a business or something like that.
You mentioned that some transactions are going to be temporary and are going to be processed but not stored, and some transactions are going to be stored permanently. Is that just a back-end accounting process, or does that impact the end user? For example, does the end user select which transaction they want to store or not, or is that something that happens in the background?
It's something that, well, it's both. We don't expect the end user to choose that. I think that will be more, things that business will do using the capabilities of the platform. But it's clear. I mean, from a user perspective, it's clear that the transaction is transient, but there are some safety mechanisms. So if a sequence of transient transactions is not closed, with the balance closing transaction, then all transactions are impacted on the blockchain and say permanently. It's much like kind of a safety mechanism where if you decide to close that series of transactions with the balance closing or settling, then you recover the amount of money you would spend by recording each and every transaction forever in the blockchain. Otherwise, you have to pay for everything. So it's kind of, I mean, it's not that you can, I mean, if you don't pay for it, you don't get get to get away with it.
Yeah. So what I see here is that there is the Bitcoin blockchain, and that's going to work like always. Nothing's going to be modified there.
Old-fashioned Bitcoin blockchain.
Yes, and then you have the RSK blockchain, which is a separate blockchain, a sidechain, and it's going to be generating blocks every 30 seconds, but in the future every 10 seconds, using the partial intermediate hashes that the Bitcoin produces. So that's going to be go validating the sidechain. And but on this side, you're going to have a lot of optimization for that blockchain to be like smaller, more efficient, etc. But you're going to incentivize nodes to hold either the whole blockchain or partial parts of the blockchain. And you mentioned that there's going to be an incentivization process. That is going to be paid by the user, I guess. And is that like the concept of rent that was brought up recently?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a little bit different than that. That's something, in our case, the incentivization to the full nodes is done by the network. Of the 100% of the proceeds of smart contract processing in RSK network, 80% go to the miners and 20% go to RSK. And from that 20%, a percentage goes to full node incentivization, and another percentage goes to the federation that secures the two-way peg between RSK and Bitcoin. So so it's a distribution among all the parties that contribute value and maintain the network running.
Very good. Okay, so now that we're talking about percentages and payments, let's go.
Storage rent. Sorry, storage rent. The thing you mentioned, it's is related to another problem. That is, today, when you say, for example, a smart contract in Ethereum, what you are doing is actually paying the equivalent of 8 years of storage for the contract. But then after that, you don't know what will happen. Of course, 8 years is a lot of time, but what we did in RSK is we have a mechanism where you only pay, to keep you pay as long as the contract is alive. Otherwise, it hibernates and get off the processing.
It gets off.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So, and you can reactivate it because, of course, the contract is still there because it's still in the blockchain, part of the blockchain. But you can activate it. They dehibernate it again and pay for the amount required to activate it. So it's a long term. I don't think it's an imminent problem, but it's a long term problem we are trying to solve.
But that second incentivization process is separate to the one that you have in place now, which is a revenue sharing system.
Yes, okay. It's a separate thing. Yeah, it's for smart contracts, not for the rest of the
Let's talk about the parts of the network. So I see that you have, correct me if I'm wrong, no? The RVM, which is the rootstock virtual machine, the blockchain itself, the database and the blocks, a currency, then a consensus mechanism.
Yes.
A programming language, and then the miners, validators, and nodes. No, are those the participants in the operating network?
Yes. I would say you can add the federation nodes that have like particular, participation as well. But yes, that's correct.
Very good. What is? Let's talk about then the currency. Bitcoin has its own currency. What is the currency in RSK?
Well, one of the decisions we made in RSK is that instead of creating our own token, our own native token, we would peg our token to Bitcoin. So our native currency is called Smart Bitcoins, and Smart Bitcoins are pegged one-on-one with Bitcoin. So there's no minting of new or issuing of new currency in RSK. All the economic incentives are, basically from processing smart contracts in the network. So that's the only incentive. There's no issuing of new coins.
Okay.
And we did that because we think that in merge mining, one problem is that if you are protecting two networks with the same infrastructure and the two networks have a different currency, then you have kind of competition for resources. So what happens if the secondary network becomes very successful and it has a different currency? Then people might abandon the original currency,
the base
because of
network.
Yeah, so that creates a tension that we didn't want to have. We wanted to have full alignment, on the secondary network and the primary network. That's why we choose not to have, which was, it came with a cost because funding a new project like ours without minting a new coin is tougher. You have to go the traditional way.
In a world of tokens and ICOs, everybody prefers to issue an ICO or a token rather than work on a network that doesn't have a new token.
That's correct.
That was something I was going to ask you later about the rollout and activity today. But before that, so the cycle is like this. I am a user. I mean an end user or a node operator. I deploy a smart contract. For that, I pay gas. Say that I send transactions and start paying gas.
That's correct.
That gas is paid in SBTC, Smart BTC. Yeah. And the way I got that Smart BTC is because I bought BTCs. I put them in an account, and then that got turned into SBTC, and I paid the gas in SBTC. That means that the SBTC is going to the other side, whoever's processing the smart contract, the miners, the validators, etc. And if they want to turn that into BTC, they reconvert that into the Bitcoin network.
That's correct. There's one special address on the Bitcoin side that is a lock address. So every time you want a smart BTC, what you do is you send one Bitcoin to that address or a fraction of a Bitcoin, and you will get the same amount, minus the expenses, the fee. Not our fee, but the network fee, the Bitcoin fee. So and you will get exactly the same amount of a smart Bitcoins on the other side, on the RSK side. And when a miner gets paid in smart Bitcoins, they can send that to a special address on the RSK network. There is a redeem address, and they will get back the original Bitcoins. So basically, every smart Bitcoin is backed by a Bitcoin.
Okay. Regarding the consensus mechanism, if we say that rootstock is a separate chain and this is Bitcoin, but each block is being sent to these miners here, and then it comes hashed, and created. Does that mean that RSK is a proof of work sidechain?
Yes, RSK is full proof of work sidechain.
Okay.
Although we are thinking about maybe doing intermediate POS or blocks
a hybrid
in the future, a hybrid, just for the sake of having faster confirmations, and using the proof of work as a seal mechanism. So if you have every 30 seconds, but that's experimental. That's something we are not haven't decided yet. For now, it's proof of work.
Yeah.
And one thing that you mentioned is the consensus protocol. Satoshi's consensus protocol is the one that Bitcoin runs. Ethereum is ghost based, and in our case, we have our own consensus protocol called Decor Plus. That does something interesting things like income smoothing. So when you mine a block, you get rewarded from previous blocks, and you contribute to following blocks. So the selfish mining itself has no value in our consensus protocol. So in a way, we leverage the 51% attack to the selfish mining attack. Both require 51% of the network to be viable. So that's an improvement over Satoshi's consensus protocol and over Ghost consensus protocol.
Excellent. And what is a programming language that people are going to use to build smart contracts?
Well, like I said, the first runtime environment is fully compatible with Solidity. So you mentioned the RVM. The RVM at this moment is only supporting one runtime environment, and that one is Solidity. So it's fully compatible with Ethereum in that sense.
Okay. Like continuous runtime, does that mean that I can send gas to a smart is it called gas also on RSK?
Yeah. We for the sake of simplicity, we keep it like gas. And it's like
there was no copyright.
No copyright there, and I think that what Ethereum did great. We don't have a problem, taking whatever and honoring, their contributions, because Ethereum did a great deal, like moving the technology forward and creating stateful, blockchain. So it's great.
The difference between one, like the way it works now, one runtime smart contracts, or the other system, continuous, I think you said, is runtime.
It's like separate. Basically, you can imagine it like different runtime environments where you can have different programming languages, but they all interact with the same database, with the same blockchain and the same world state. So you could have a second runtime in the future that implements simplicity, for example. And so you can run two smart contracts in different runtime environments, but they are both interacting with the same accounts, with the same world state. So you have interoperability between different programming languages, and you can have a more restrictive, runtime environment, and some even with DSLs, with domain-specific languages, which I think is where we should go, or have frameworks at least. So we are not reinventing the wheel over and over.
But this issue of a continuous runtime, does that mean that I can have a contract that continues operating across several blocks? Instead of
no, it's only this concept of having multiple runtime environments interacting on the blockchain level, but it's the same functioning as Ethereum has today. It's like
it's within the same state transition.
Yes, it's within the same state transition.
Okay, then I didn't get it in the first time then. So the participants, the nodes, the participants in RSK are miners, validators, and the federations. Those are the three participants?
Yes, that's correct. And the federation fulfills one particular role, that is releasing the funds from RSK into Bitcoin. until we have an alternative that is also secured by proof of work. We work on a proposal ourselves of drive chain. That's the mechanism. And Paul Storr's team also work on an alternative. We are now peer reviewing their alternative, but that needs to be implemented in Bitcoin as a soft fork. So we believe in incremental, incremental decentralization, incremental security. So we think it's difficult to have the ultimate system. So the federation-based system is good enough for now. We have a restricted amount of Bitcoins in the peg until we feel that mechanism is safe enough. And as we feel more secure, more confident, and even and when we have better mechanisms like drive chain, we'll release the limitation and let the peg run wild.
Very good. So the miners are the Bitcoin miners. The federation are the ones that are going to hold the money in Bitcoin and make it available on Rootstock, and manage the flow up and back from Rootstock.
Well, they only manage the flow back, not the flow up. Doesn't require the federation. The flow from Bitcoin into RSK is secured by the proof of work mechanism. So on that way is fully decentralized. On the way back is where you need until Bitcoin has this improvement, and that's needed because the Bitcoin blockchain cannot understand another blockchain. So that was one of the flaws why people was like saying that a sidechain was impossible. Because people look into a perfect world. We made a sidechain, indeed, a production-ready sidechain, but that requires some level of centralization in the meantime.
But say that there's 1,000 Bitcoins locked up to generate 1,000 SBTCs in RSK.
Yes.
Those were moved up into RSK. The federation didn't have anything to do. Don't they control that account at least?
Yeah. That they control the multisig that controls that account.
Okay, so they have some role there.
Yeah, what I mean is the creation is not. It's not in the hands of the federation. Only the redemption part. But of course, they are in charge of the funds.
And there are validators also on RSK.
Yes, we have full nodes that are validators, and they, much like in any decentralized blockchain, they get a copy of the blockchain. They act as a communication backbone, and they validate every transaction that will go through them. So they have the same purpose as in Bitcoin or Ethereum. No?
These validators are what I also call them in Bitcoin. I call them economic nodes, for example, like wallets, exchanges, etc.
Yes, and that's how it goes in Bitcoin mostly. But with the economic incentive we are going to provide to the full nodes, we expect that to also be aficionados and people willing to contribute to the cause as well. And in my vision, in the future, maybe you will have a media center in your house, and that media center will have a piece of the hardware devoted to RSK, to Bitcoin blockchain, and even to store information from others. So you will pay. Your media center will pay by itself by contributing to the decentralized economy. So that's a little bit of what we are trying to achieve with that. We want to leverage on the RSK network to create a decentralized storage system as well.
I think it's very interesting to have that model for the validators. So it's not really just voluntary nodes or nodes that have their own business model, like Coinbase or an exchange or Poloniex, etc. on Bitcoin. Just being a validator in itself is a business model.
Yes, that's the idea, because I think in the original vision of Satoshi, he expected every miner to be also full node, but then with the specialization of hardware and the economics of a scale, that those two functions got separated. So with this, we want to create incentive models for that part of the network that got split in a way. because
Okay.
in the original vision, everybody was going to be mining from
Yes.
their PCs, from their homes. So this is taking back, I mean, creating economic incentives to go back to that
Yeah.
vision, that
And
decentralized.
you just need a good storage, a good memory, because it's so you can
Yes.
store the whole blockchain, but you don't need a supercomputer. You just need.
Yes. Yes. There are some things that need to be worked, like the asymmetry in up links and down links, you know, because usually home computers have, you know, low up links, but I think that's evolving. You know, we are seeing more and more symmetric connections in the home. So I think, you know, that will be
Mhm.
solved.
Very good. So let's talk about security. No, and I understand that the present stage is with a federation
Yes.
with 30-second blocks. It's a smaller chain. You decided to restrict the amount of Bitcoin uploaded to
Yes.
SBTC because you're going like in grades, no? And
Exactly.
that drive change in the future is something for the future. So that I think that's reasonable. But I saw also that you have like a governance system that you thought for future development of the protocol. Is that the case? Do you still have? I saw that the miners, exchanges, wallets, users, developers, the BTC Foundation, and possibly the Ethereum Foundation would be voting on something in the future. Is that still the case?
Well, I mean, we are working on that. We don't have the final model, but you know, that was a statement within the RSK white paper, the original one we released in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And the spirit still remains the same. I mean, we want to get out of God mode, as I call it, the sooner we can. You know, it's difficult not to be in God mode in the initial stages, no? When you are defining the protocols, testing. I mean, you need to be nimble to adapt to the things you realize are flawed or need improvement. I think there are some things that are missing also in terms of visibility. I wouldn't say in terms of making decisions, but yes, in terms of knowing where the ecosystem is. For example, I think the resistance to do hard forks in Bitcoin in big part come from the fact that we don't have a clear visibility on where the economic actors are. I mean, we have clear visibility on where the miners are. Full nodes, you can kind of know where they are based on the full node version they have, but we don't know exactly where the economic actors stands. And I was a big proponent of having transaction origination signaling, so we know, you know, in which release of software or how ready and willing to incorporate a hard fork or a new feature are the economic actors. So that's something we will work on. And I think from developers' perspective, developers are more like proponents of you know, of features and implementers. So the cycle there will be more about funding development for new features than actually giving them the power to make decisions. Because the problem is, when you want to make decisions on a decentralized network, there needs to be, I mean, your decisions might, you know, happen today, but the economic impact, I mean, you need to remain engaged late, you know, further than the impact of your decisions, because otherwise you can make decisions and bail out of the ecosystem. So with miners, it's very easy because they have a lot of infrastructure. I mean, they are long term, so if they make bad decisions today, they will leave the consequences no matter what. With coin holders, it's much difficult unless they lock their coins. And then even if they lock their coins, you need to have a representative amount of the money in the ecosystem for taking them, you know, at stake. So in that sense, you know, we are working on those things. Maybe voting from coin holders, having separate keys for holding and voting, so we can give coin holders the opportunity to choose which features get into the system. We can create funding mechanisms so development teams can do proposals. get voting, and then those proposals will roll over the network and be approved. But it's not like, we'll have a direct decision mechanism over the. I mean, we will stick more or less to the Bitcoin style. Like, you if you want it, deploy the node, upgrade the software, and that goes, and that moves forward. But we want to improve, visibility, and we want to improve how the funding mechanism, how the interaction between coin holders, developers, and the rest of the ecosystem goes.
So for now, it is in God mode. That means that RSK, the company, is guiding the development process and the rollout that I'm going to ask later. And then in the future, probably you're going to preserve Bitcoin's like anarchic system.
Yes.
But with a maybe better information systems between the players.
That's correct.
And making sure that in that information system, they also have like a stake in the process, no? Instead of just saying, I want this and leaving the network in the future.
Exactly. So we want to test some improvements, but I think managing decentralized organizations or ecosystems is something new to the humankind. So nobody can say, okay, we have the final say in this. For us, it's more about experimenting things and seeing if we can contribute improvements to what we have so far. And if those improvements prove useful, then other crypto economies can take them.
Yeah, a full governance system would have like, I don't know how many, whichever amount of parties, like 7 parties if you want, each one with 1 vote, and then they would vote, and then that vote would enforce the change. But it seems that what you are saying is that you're going to have like very important parties in the network. They're going to have an opinion, but nevertheless, the validators and the nodes are going to be able to choose whether they adopt that change or not.
Exactly, but with more transparency, because everybody says, no, a hard fork is not possible. And what I say is, if you knew that 95% of the economic actors or the transactions are supporting a hard fork, and you know that 95% of the miners are supporting a hard fork, then you very likely will move ahead and do it. But now we don't have that visibility, so the actors don't have the information. Part of the cyberpunk movement is about having nice information markets, no? So it's like, symmetry in the information is key, and I think that's something we are lacking in a way.
The symmetry in the information, as long as the freedom of the individuals participating is preserved. So I think that's
correct.
That's why they called it rough consensus, no? Because implicitly, like you say, if 95% of the participants adopted the new change, evidently, it's because they voluntarily accepted it.
Accepted. That's correct.
It's implicit. The other interesting thing that I saw is that the federation, being that it's an intermediate step of security, the federation, you were like recruiting members for the federation. That can you tell me who they are? And I saw here that they have to be between 20 or 30 nodes in that federation.
Yes.
And in different countries and jurisdictions. How is that organized?
Yeah, it's mostly why we choose the federation members is basically because they already have secure environments. They because of the nature of their businesses, they need to run secure network environments. So it makes sense they already have some secure when you do a federation, you are in between the traditional security model and the new security model, because it has certain level of decentralization, but it's not full decentralization. So you need to take the best of both worlds, and our federation has HSMs and all the things that come from traditional security, plus Byzantine fault tolerant protocols. So a little bit of both. So in that sense, we choose exchanges, wallets, organizations that already have secure environments because of their business model requires them to do so. In the future, I think this is like the beginning. in the future we might have bigger federations and even federations of federations. So maybe, I don't know, a banking organization might want to have their own federation to do a final validation of their own smart contracts, and that's part of the vision. Is like, we think that, in certain areas you want full decentralization. In certain areas you say, okay, I want to keep the central or the trust minimization models that already exist. So maybe Swift in the future would say, okay, I rather have an RSK federation for our members and use the proof of work mainnet of RSK, but with a final saying on my side by my federation. So this is the first federation, but we are proving concepts that in the future we want to have maybe a federation of federations, maybe a balloting system. So you don't use all the members of the federation, but you randomly choose different members of the federation to sign the transactions. So in that sense, for example, improvements like MAST in Bitcoin might be very useful, because then you can have multi-sigs of, I don't know, 50 out of 101 participants instead of 7 or 8 out of 15 like we can have with multi-sig in Bitcoin today.
And what is the current status of the network? Is it rolled out? Is it in phases? What is the current phase?
Yes, I mean, we call it mainnet beta. So because it's fully functional, 10% of we have 3 exahashes protecting RSK, so 10% of the Bitcoin network is already protecting RSK, and that's an interesting distinction. One thing is the security of the peg, and one thing is the security of RSK, because the security of RSK is equal to 10% of the Bitcoin network, which I estimate in economic security terms, like the Vitalik's models. I think it's around maybe half of Ethereum network as it is today, in terms of the hardware devoted and the economic security. So I mean, that's high security for every token issued and transferred within the RSK network. The peg is the only. That's why we limited that part. No, so the peg is the only. So as long as you are using smart Bitcoins for fuel and your tokens are safe, and we estimate that people will use only a few fraction of SBTCs to. We don't want RSK to become the store of value network. We understand Bitcoin is a store of value network. We want people to use SBTC just to run their smart contracts and keep them in the small amounts they need, maybe for daily needs or for running smart contracts.
So 10% today, the current status is that it's in beta. It's connected to the main Bitcoin network. Yes. Is the sidechain, is a RSK sidechain already ready for production, even though it's in beta? Okay.
Yes.
And 10%.
I mean, we are. If you install Jax, that is the first wallet that supported smart Bitcoins. I can send you smart Bitcoins right away.
Okay.
As we speak.
And 10% of the mining power, hashing power of Bitcoin is already providing hashes to secure RSK.
That's correct.
And who are the federation? How many Bitcoins are there already locked up?
Well, it's less than 21, because what we are doing is we are giving the smart Bitcoins, or allowing companies to create smart Bitcoins that have applications that want to run applications on RSK. So now we have a whitelisting process where companies that want to deploy smart contracts on RSK, they ask for permission. We add their address to the whitelisting, and then they can have a smart Bitcoin. So we have around maybe 15 Bitcoins in the peg, more or less.
15 Bitcoins, and which is the federation that is securing that?
It's a RSK federation. It's the one with all the members. We don't say the members for security reasons, but yeah, you can see it. I think in the page you have most of the ones that adhere to the process. No, it's like in RSK page. So it's top exchanges in the world. It's like India,
the federation.
China.
Say that Rootstock it's widely used. The federation is going to be transparent. No, everybody's going to know who are the people.
Well, you know what are the name. I mean, you can see the nodes. No, you can see what are, but ideally, you don't want to disclose that information, at least in this point, because in this point, it's like we are securing and we are running a bounty program, so we don't want to overexpose them. But
Today.
yes, later on, yeah.
Today. Okay.
Yeah, later on, everybody will be able to see. I mean, you can see the network now, so you see who is signing and everything, so you kind of know where are the full nodes, but we don't want to overexpose them.
When you
But
mean
you have the list.
When you mean you can see the network, you mean in a block explorer?
Yes, in the block explorer of RSK or Bitcoin, and also in our page, all the members are there, but not all of them are participants of the federation. That's what I mean. I mean, you can know who might be involved. We don't say exactly which ones are the ones involved.
Okay. What is the logic for the confidentiality in that part?
Well, if you say
they can be attacked by others or something like that.
That's basically what I mean. That is kind of old tradition of security versus fully decentralized and trust minimized security. But you have the list on the page. There are 25 companies. Of those, 15 are participating on the peg.
Okay.
Because the peg is a multi-sig with 8 out of 15. Mm-hmm.
There were three. I thought that there were three things. This relationship between the sidechain and Bitcoin. One is the peg, the money peg. Now you have Bitcoins here, and the other one is the cross mining or the merge mining. The third one that I think I read is about the federation securing blocks or groups of blocks through checkpoints.
Yeah, but that's not mandatory. It's more like a warning system. It's like you have checkpoints. The federation will issue checkpoints every now and then. So you, as an application developer, can choose to use those checkpoints as a sanity check. But you are not. It's not mandatory. It's like it's not in the consensus. So you can just disregard the checkpoints. That's an additional element, given that we have less than 50% of the hashing power of Bitcoin at the moment. You might have an attack where the reminder of the primary network creates an attack on the secondary network. So those checkpoints are a safety feature in case that attack happens. It's not that we think it will happen, because in general, I mean, 85% of the pools in the world already implemented the RSK merge mining software. So it's a matter of time, until we reach, more than 50% of the hashing power. But in the meantime, it's a safety measure to have independent checkpoints signed by the federation. But it's not mandatory.
Okay, now I get it. That's as long as less than 50% of the mining power is securing RSK, the checkpoints make sense because it's a third party, not third party, but it's the federation saying, okay, these blocks are okay, these blocks are okay, these blocks are okay. Yeah. When the hashing power dedicated or that is working also for RSK is more than 50%, is going to be secure in itself. So the checkpoints are not going to be there. Yeah. Well, my last question is for developers. You mentioned that company, there's a whitelist. Is RSK planned to be for all developers? There's some developers that are just one person somewhere and they just create new products, etc., by themselves, or there's huge companies like IBM. So what is the vision of which kinds of developers and companies are going to use RSK?
Well, I think the nature of what we are building is to enable competition in markets and industries that didn't have competition for hundreds of years. So if you ask me who I'm targeting in my heart, is the small guys, the underdogs. I mean, that's what I would love to see running on RSK. But at the same time, I think, one of my main objectives, and it's a shared objective in RSK, is we want to create social impact. So we want to tailor or create solutions for, not solutions, but the infrastructure that will enable a financial inclusive system. So I would love to see governments and big organizations also collaborating if they are going to contribute to solve, the exclusion we have in our society. So if that happens, I'm not. I would say RSK is trying, the more efficient, the more secure, and the more stable environment to execute decentralized smart contracts, with the purpose of enabling financial inclusion. And that implies that we will need to somehow, through the different layers and infrastructure we are building, take the transactional cost down to less than 2 cents USD. So with that environment, with an environment where you can run a smart contract transaction for less than 2 cents, then everybody will use it.
Okay.
Our target is financial inclusion, and we are now running at 3.5 cents per transaction, which is very low, but I think it might go up, in the future a little bit, and through Lumino and the other layers, we plan to take this down to less than a cent. So that's the idea.
When do you think that developers are going to be able to freely just deploy stuff on RSK? Now it's in beta with some restrictions, with the whitelist, etc.
Yes.
When is it going to be fully open? Do you estimate?
I think, after the second half of the year. I mean, our target is maybe, end of May, June. That's the target. We are going to open the peg. But having said that, everybody can deploy it. I mean, we are just controlling the smart Bitcoin distribution, and if you register, we are even giving developers some smart Bitcoins for free to run their applications in the beginning, so they can test the platform. So I mean, the spirit is not to censorship anything. So if you have a smart contract application, you can right now and test it, and you can even have some free fuel to run your application for a few months. So in that sense, we understand we are the gatekeepers, but it's open. The spirit is that anybody can do it now, and hopefully in a couple of months, you won't need to record to us.
Okay, so we can expect the second half to be fully open.
Yes.
Very good. Excellent.
Definitely.
Diego, thank you very much. Today is Friday late in the afternoon, so thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you very much, and I like it. You did a thoroughful interview, and then we touched every aspect of RSK. So thank you for that. I think it's very valuable.
Well, let's talk maybe later in the year to see how everything is going.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bueno.